Beer is as old as mankind itself, and part of the reason the drink has stood the test of time is its simple ingredients. The process of making beer is really very simple at its core. In a special report, MTN's Andy Curtis takes a look at the steps that have been refined and perfected to give us the variety of beers we know today.
Beer! It's why the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, how we know Billy Carter, and the reason some of us were born. The libation is a huge part of human culture, and here in Montana it's no different, with the number of domestic microbreweries in the Treasure State doubling in the past 5 years. But you ask, how is it made? Well, all beer is really just 4 ingredients: water, malt, yeast, and hops, each added at different times and in different amounts for different beers. The malt, which is actually barley grains, is basically tricked into thinking it's spring, so their enzymes activate, it's heated, and then used by the brewers.
Then we're going to crush it, pump it up, add a little bit of hot water, and what that's going to do is take those enzymes that were kind of stopped, and we're going to reactivate those enzymes. So we want those enzymes to get going, break down all the starches in the kernel, and do sugars that we can then use to ferment into beer.
Now, a good way to think of it is if a batch of beer were a loaf of bread. This base malt would be the flour. Within an hour of being in that hot water, the enzymes have finished doing their job and made a sweet liquid called wort. It's then recirculated in the tank in order to filter out any impurities, and the mix is moved to the kettle, brought to a boil, and hops are added.
Hops do 2 things. They give bitterness and kind of different flavors to the beer, and they also act as a natural, it's a preservative is probably a better way to describe it, but hops will kill beer spoiling bacteria.
This new mixture is then whirlpooled to settle the hops and moved to the fermenter, where the temperature is lowered and yeast is added.
And then that yeast is kind of going to do the rest of the work. It's going to consume the sugar that we took from the grain and convert it into alcohol and carbon dioxide.
That yeast is eventually removed and the beer is moved to cooling tanks and in most cases filtered. Then give it a little bit of time and voila, you got yourself some beer. But just like every other craft, there are always painstaking tweaks and improvements that can be made.
Say, hey, what do we like about this one? Okay, how can we achieve that flavor? What do we not like? What do we want ours to be like, you know? So it's really fun when we get to make a new recipe because you get to sit around and drink beer.
Huh, that doesn't sound too bad. Reporting from Helena and seeing if any breweries have any job openings, I'm Andy Curtis.
If that left you thirsty for more, tune in here tomorrow night for part 2 of Andy's hoppy adventure to some of Helena's best breweries to find out how the novice can get their feet wet when diving headfirst into the world of craft beers.